We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Chav Daled Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 124a. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which said that if Yarshim inherit a cow, and let's say the cow is rented out and it's bringing in income, the Bechor is going to get a double portion of that income. And similarly, let's say the cow is grazing in the meadow and it gives birth, the Bechor is going to get a double portion of that as well. And the Gemara asked, why does the brisa need to bring both cases? And the Gemara says it's to compare one case to the other. Just like in the case of the cow giving birth, so the Yisomim, the Yarshim, are not actively feeding the cow. It's happening naturally. It's grazing in the public areas. Af muchkeres umuskeres. So too in the case where the cow is rented out, shivcha de memela kasi. It's specifically talking about when you have profits that come memela, that come automatically, to lo chasri b'mezone, meaning that the Yisomim, the Yarshim, are not spending any money to feed the animal. Only in such an arrangement would we say that the Bechor gets a double portion. And the Rashbam explains, Af muchkeres umuskeres b'shivcha de memela. So too if it's leased or if it's rented out, we're only talking about the profit that comes memela. Kamairi, that's what we're dealing with in the brisa. De'ein malin lo hayisomim mezonos. We're talking about a situation where the orphans don't actually have to provide mezonos for the animal. That's the arrangement of this cow that's being rented out. And again, that kind of shivcha de memela, then we say the Bechor gets double. And the Gemara continues, money. So who is the author of the brisa? The Gemara says, Rebbe, the author of the brisa is Rebbe. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Ein Bechor notel pishnayim b'shevach sheshivchu nechasim le'achar misas avi, and the Bechor does not take a double portion of any improvements that happen to the property after their father died. That's the opinion of the Tanakama. But Rebbe says, Omer ani, I say, Bechor notel pishnayim b'shevach sheshivchu nechasim le'achar misas avi, and I say that the Bechor does take a double portion if there are improvements to the property after the death of their father, avolo b'shavach, but not by improvements shehishbichu yisomim. If the orphans actively caused the improvement, if it wasn't memela, so then the Bechor does not get a double portion la'achar misas avi. And again, if the yisomim are the ones that caused the improvements after the death of their father, the Bechor does not get a double portion. And the Baraisa continues, Yarshu shtar chov. Let's say they inherit a shtar chov, Bechor notel pishnayim. So then the Bechor does take a double portion. What that means is if the father had a shtar chov, he was a creditor, he was able to collect a debt with this shtar, so the Bechor gets a double portion of the collection of that debt. And the Rashbam explains that this line in the Baraisa is Rebbe. Again, Rebbe says that all shivcha de memela, we say that the Bechor gets a double portion. That's true by Yarshu shtar chov as well. And then the Brisa says, Yotza alein shtar chov. Let's say a shtar chov goes out against the orphans, against the Yorshim. So then Bechor nosein pishnayim. Then the Bechor has to pay a double amount. Just like the Bechor gets a double portion, he also is responsible to pay the double portion. However, v'mamar eini nosein ve'eini notel. If a Bechor would say, I don't want to take any of my double portion at all, I just want to inherit like everybody else, but I also don't want to pay double of the debts, so Rashoy, so the Bechor is allowed to do that. And the Rashbam explains, Yarshu shtar chov, if they inherit a shtar chov, hainu milva b'shtar. This specifically is talking about a loan with a document, Bechor notel pishnayim, then the Bechor gets double of the collection of that loan. To kevan de muchzik b'shtar, since the father was in possession of a shtar, v'al pi hashtar goven es hamilva, it's through the shtar that they collect the loan, hareu ki'ilu hashtar hishbiach, it's as if the shtar has now improved. Dahainu nechasim sheshivchu memela, that's the same thing as property that improved automatically. And the Rashbam continues, Umiu aliba de Rabbanon, nevertheless, according to the Rabbanon, eino notel pishnayim. So then the Bechor would not get a double portion, because according to the Rabbanon, the Bechor does not get a double portion of the nechasim sheshivchu memela. Umaskara demil said to Rebbe, that's why we say that this line in the Bryce is really the concluding words of Rebbe. V'hachi mukach lekaman b'shmait, and this is going to be clear later on in the sugya. And the Rashbam notes, V'dafka milva b'shtar. All of this is only true by a milva b'shtar when there's a document. Avol milva al peh, but let's say it was a loan and there was no document. V'afilu be'edim, even if there are witnesses to the loan. Kevan deleka shtara, since there's no document. Umotzi lemitan parati aloch, and so therefore the borrower could claim that I already paid you back. Tahamal v'eschaver be'edim ein tzarich lefaru be'edim, because the aloch is, if somebody lends his friend with witnesses, the person does not have to pay back with witnesses. So then afilu Rebbe mode, then even Rebbe would admit to lo shakel pishnayim, that the Bechor would not get a double portion, because they're not in possession of this debt at all, that we should be able to say that the property improved on its own. And Yotza Alein shtar shtarchov, let's say the other way around, the shtarchov went out against the Yorshim, against the Yisomim, shechayev aviyim la'acherim, that their father was chayev to pay somebody else. Milsa ba'an pei nafshahi, the Rashbam notes this is its own statement. V'divrei hakol, this everybody would agree to. Ve'afilu below Yorshu shtarchov ma'iri, this is talking even a situation where they didn't inherit a shtarchov, it's just a separate case. There's a shtarchov against them. So then bechor nosin pishnaim, then the bechor has to pay double. Ki hechi denotel pishnaim, just like he collects a double portion of all of the inheritance. She'osa nechasim nishtabdu kulan lamalva, because the idea is he's collecting a double portion, and all of the property is meshubit to this creditor who's coming and collecting from them, so he has to pay a double amount from the rest of the brothers. V'yamamar eini notel. Now, if he says, I'm not going to take pishnayim, you call Yerusha Savi, I don't want to take double at all from the inheritance of my father. Sha'areini mochel chelik bechora, I'm being mochel my bechora portion. Ve'etol chelik kapashat, I'm just taking like everyone else. Ulefikach lo ashalim lamal ve'pishnayim ela kenegen mashani notel. Therefore, I'm not going to pay double, I'm just going to pay according to what I'm taking. Rashoy, then that would be permitted. Ucheshetovo zahamal v'ladin, when this lender brings them to court, ein bezin yichon l'chofel lefroa ela keneged chelek pshitu. So the bezin cannot force him to pay, except corresponding to the amount that he's inheriting, like any of the other brothers. And the Gemara continues, "My time, mayu de Rabbanon." What's the reason of the Rabbanon that the Bechor does not get the double portion from the property that improved Memela? And the reason is Amar Krutz, because the pasuk says Loses lo pishnaim. It says he's given the double portion. Matana kirya rachmana. The pasuk is referring to that double portion, that extra portion, as a matana, as a gift. Ma matana adematia liyade. Just like by a gift, a person can't give a gift unless he's actually in possession of what he is giving. So af chelik bechora. So too the portion of the bechor, that extra double portion, adematia liyade, it has to actually be in possession of the father in order for him to get a double portion. Otherwise, he does not get a double portion. The idea over here is you can't give him a ton if you don't have the property, because eina de makne dover shelo baliolam, and so too by the chelik bechora, the improvements that happen after the fact, after the father dies, even if they happen memela, according to the Rabbanan, since it's called a matana, the bechor does not get a double portion of those improvements. And the Gemara continues, V'Rebbe Omer, and Rebbe says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says pishnaim, it says that he gets a double portion, and we learn from that pasuk makish chelik bechora lechelik pashat, that we compare that portion of the bechora, that extra portion, to the regular portion that he inherits. The two are compared to one another. Machelik pashat afagav de lo matal yade, just like the chelik pashat, even though it did not get to his hands, he's still able to inherit it. Af chelik bechora, so too when it comes to the chelik bechora, afagav de lo matal yade, even though the father didn't yet get it, it's something that's ro'oi, so to speak, still he gets a double portion. Now the Rashbam notes, a bechor does not get a double portion in ro'oi, he only gets double portion in muchzak, but the point over here is it doesn't have to be a full muchzak. If it's a shevach, if it's an improvement that happens memela, that is considered to be enough muchzak, that therefore the bechor would in fact get that double portion. Now when it comes to the regular inheritance, the part that's not a double portion, that you can inherit even when it's ro'oi, even when it is fully ro'oi. And the idea is, since that is true by the chelik pashat, so by the chelik bechora, when we talk about the shevach that happens memela, the bechor gets that as part of his double portion as well. And the Gemara continues, V'Rabbanan nami haksiv pishnayim. Now the Rabbanan also doesn't it say pishnayim? Shouldn't we compare the chelik bechora to the chelik pashat? The Gemara says, Ahu lameis v'lei achad mitzvah. The idea of pishnayim, according to the Rabbanan, is to say that he should get all of the property along one border, one boundary. The idea over here is, let's say, for example, there are two brothers, and so the bechor is going to get a double portion. He's going to get 2 plots of land, and the other brother is going to get 1 plot of land. What we'll say is that the bechor, the firstborn, will certainly get the middle plot of land. Let's say there's 1 piece of land to the right and 1 piece to the left. So then they can decide whether the bechor is going to get the right piece of land or the left piece of land, but he'll certainly get the one in the middle. That way all of his property will be contiguous. And the Gemara continues, V'Rebbe nami. Now Rebbe also haksiv loses lo. Doesn't it say loses lo, which means it's a matana? And again, if it's considered to be a matana, why should he be able to get the shevach that happens memela? And the Gemara says that Rebbe uses the pasuk of loses lo. Hahu, that pasuk is for the following: Shemamar eini notel ve'eini nosen. That if the bechor wants, he can say, I don't want to take my double portion, but I also don't want to have to pay a double portion to the creditors. Rashoy, and he would be permitted to do that. And the Gemara continues, Amar Papa says, Dikla v'yolim, let's say they inherit a palm tree and it grows bigger. Aravasik sirton, let's say they inherit land and it yields silt. Tukuli alma lo pligi, there's no dispute whatsoever. The shakel, certainly the bechor, is going to get a double portion of that kind of improvement. Ki pligi, when is there machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rebbe? Bechafura v'have shuvli, shlufafe v'have tamre. When fodder becomes full ears of grain, or let's say date flowers that become dates, so that's already a machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rebbe. The Mar Savar, One holds Shivcha de Memela, that's just Shivcha de Memela, that's what Rebbe holds. It's automatic improvement, the Bechor does get a double portion. Umar Savar Ishtani, but the Rabbanan say that's considered to be a change already, and the Bechor does not get a double portion of that. And the Rashbam explains, Dikla Katan Hiniach Len Avin, if their father left them a small palm tree, Va'olim Shenisave, it became stronger, it became thicker, Acharechein after that, V'chein Hiniach Len Ara Viaska, Acharechein Sirton, let's say the father left them land and it brought up, it yielded silt, V'zevel, and it had fertilizer, V'nesiafsa Bekach, it became improved because of that. To Kuli Alma, Rebbe V'Rabbanan, everybody agrees, both Rebbe and the Rabbanan agree, meaning even the Rabbanan agree, to Shakel, that the Bechor takes a double portion. The point is, the Adayin Shmo Olav, because it still has the same name. It's still fundamentally considered to be the same property. However, let's say you have Bechafura, means Shachas, let's say you have fodder. It's not totally ripe. Hiniach land, that's what the father leaves them. V'nasu achrech and shuvli, and then it becomes ears of grain. V'chein shlufafi dekolim sheifrichu peiros, let's say you have palm trees and they have these flowers. V'nasu achrech and tamarim, which later become dates. B'chi agavna shivcha de memela pligi, that kind of shivcha de memela, that's the machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rebbe. And again, Umar Savar, the Rabbanan hold, that's a change. Ha'esav lios chitin, it's become wheat. V'haprachim lios tamarim, the prachim, the flowers became dates. To have a davar acher, that's a new thing, v'shem acher, and it's a new name, and that's why there's a machlokas tanoim in that case. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Reb Chia. Rabba Bar Chana says that Reb Chia says, also Kedivrei Rebbe, if somebody rules like Rebbe, also that's a good ruling. Kedivrei Chachamim, also if somebody rules like the Chachamim, that's a good ruling, meaning again, in this situation where you have Shivcha de Memela, whether the Bechor takes double like Rebbe says, whether the Bechor does not take a double portion of that like the Chachamim say, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Chav Dalid Amid Beis.